darkness between the stars. In the year 2020, the deep space probe Erebus 9 drifted through an unexplored region of the galaxy, the Xiphos 7 system. For centuries, humanity had searched for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence, yet no definitive proof had ever been found. That changed when Erebus 9 intercepted a strange signal originating from a desolate planet called Aeternis. It was not just a simple transmission, it was a complex wave pattern, seemingly a warning. Upon landing on Aeternis, the exploration team discovered a massive underground structure. Unlike anything built by human hands, its walls were engraved with cryptic symbols that pulsed with a faint, eerie glow. As Dr. Jonas Vekov, the lead archaeologist, examined the structure, he inadvertently triggered an unknown mechanism. A door opened. Inside, they found an entity, seemingly petrified, yet its eyes still glowed silver. A voice, deep and resonant, echoed directly into their minds. "You have come too soon. You were not meant to be here." Before they could react, fragmented visions flooded their consciousness, glimpses of an ancient civilization that once ruled the galaxy, only to mysteriously vanish. The last remnants of this lost empire had left behind a warning, but humanity had been too curious. Then, the silver light in the creature's eyes flickered out. A deep tremor shook the planet. The surface of Aeternis began to crack apart. Erebus 9 launched in emergency evacuation as the planet below collapsed, as if it had never been a world, but rather a prison. A final whisper echoed in their minds before the signal was lost forever. "You have freed what should have remained bound. They will return." And somewhere in the depths of the cosmos, something awakened. As Erebus 9 ascended, the crew watched in horror as Aeternis crumbled into itself, its core imploding with an unnatural silence. There was no explosion, just an eerie folding of space, as if the planet had never truly existed. Dr. Vekov sat motionless in his seat, sweat beading down his forehead. The visions still burned in his mind, titanic structures floating in the void, alien beings whispering in forgotten tongues, and a vast shadow spreading between the stars. "Captain," whispered Lieutenant Sarah Holt, staring at the ship's main monitor. The screen flickered. A new signal had appeared. Unlike the first, this one was not a warning. It was a summoning. Coordinates manifested in the data stream, pointing toward a sector far beyond known space. But more disturbing was the signature of the transmission. It wasn't coming from Aeternis. It was coming from inside their ship. Panic spread among the crew. Chief Engineer Lau frantically scanned the systems. "This isn't a glitch. Something is." He stopped. His expression turned cold. The lights dimmed. A deep, resonant hum vibrated through the ship's hull, a frequency just beneath the threshold of hearing, yet it felt alive. Then the whispering began. Not over the radio, not through their comms. Inside their minds. It spoke in fragmented thoughts, overlapping voices that scratched at their sanity. The veil is broken. The cycle turns once more. You called, and we answer. Captain Rise gritted his teeth. Full lockdown. No one moves alone. But it was too late. Dr. Vekov's shadow began to move, detaching from his feet. Stretching unnaturally, it rose against the dim emergency lights, its form shifting, twisting. And then it turned to look at them. A chilling silence fell over the bridge. The shadow detached completely from Dr. Vekov, standing independently like a smudge of darkness against reality itself. It had no eyes, no mouth, just an ever-shifting void, rippling unnaturally, as if it were made of something more than mere absence. Dr. Vekov convulsed, his body stiffening. His eyes turned pitch black, his breath shallow and erratic. "They are here," he whispered, his voice layered with something inhuman. Then the ship shuddered. A warning siren blared. Holt's hands flew across the control panel, struggling to make sense of the data flooding the system. "Captain, we're losing control of..." The gravity flickered. For a brief moment, Erebus 9 was weightless, adrift not in space, but in something else. The monitors glitched, filling with static, then faces. Distorted, elongated faces screaming silently, their mouths stretched wide, their eyes hollow. Captain Rise ripped off his headset, but the voices didn't stop. They were no longer coming from the comms. They were inside the ship. A loud crack split the air. Lau spun around. Dr. Vekov's neck twisted unnaturally, his head snapping back an impossible angle. Yet his body still stood. Then the whispering voices spoke in unison. You open the gate. Now you will see. The ship's viewports darkened as something huge moved outside. Not a ship, not an asteroid. Something alive! A great shape loomed in the void, black against black, its form shifting like liquid shadow. Dozens of unblinking eyes opened across its surface, each burning with cold silver fire. The whispers ceased. A single thought filled every mind aboard Erebus 9. You were never alone. Then the lights died. Darkness between the stars continued. The darkness swallowed the ship. No warning lights, no display screens, no artificial hum of machinery, only the ragged breathing of those trapped in the void. Then a knock echoed. Not from the door, not from the floor, but from inside. We can't stay here, Holt whispered, gripping the console, eyes wide with terror. We need to. Lau screamed. All heads snapped toward him. He was no longer there. Instead, a twisted form stood in his place, something that had once been Lau, but was now something else entirely. His face was warped, stretched like a shredded canvas. His eyes hollow, endless voids. Don't let them touch, Lau gasped before he vanished. Not disintegrated, not sucked into space, he was erased from existence. Reyes drew his gun, but his hands shook. How do you shoot something that has no true form? A shadowed hand emerged from the darkness, touching the control panel. The ship lurched. The screens flickered back to life, but they no longer displayed Erebus 9 systems. A galactic map appeared, unlike anything they had ever seen. The stars were veiled beneath a spreading black network, tendrils of shadow stretching like a cosmic plague. Then a voice spoke directly into their minds. No more whispers. It was clear, powerful, and not human. Did you think you were the first? You are merely among the last. Reyes clenched his fists. Who are you? Silence. Then a single word, a name, a title buried in the dark corners of the universe. We are the old reality. Reyes felt something shifting. Not just on the ship, not just in the space around them, but within himself. A searing pain ripped through his mind, hundreds of images slamming into his consciousness at once. Massive ships drifting in darkness, burned from the inside out. Distant worlds erased, leaving no trace of life. Ancient beings with silver eyes, kneeling before something invisible, before being consumed. You are not the first to step into this darkness, but you will be the last to see the light. The screen in front of them shifted, displaying a colossal image, an uncharted planet. But it was unlike anything humanity had ever recorded. It pulsed like a heart. Its surface had no mountains, no oceans, only billions of writhing entities, twisting, convulsing, as if the entire planet had been formed from their bodies. Holt staggered backward, her hand over her mouth. "Oh God, that's—" A voice echoed, this time not unfamiliar. Dr. Vekov. But he was dead. "We never left Eternis," he whispered, his voice coming from everywhere at once. The doors on the ship's deck slid open without anyone touching them. Outside, there was no longer the empty void of space. Instead, two massive eyes opened from the abyss, staring directly at them. Time seemed to stop. Reyes understood. There was no going back. No more warnings. They belonged here now. The silence was suffocating. No alarms, no hum of the ship, only the presence staring at them from beyond. The eyes were not just looking, they were studying. Something shifted inside the ship. A low, vibrating hum pulsed through the metal, resonating deep in their bones. The walls seemed to breathe, stretching, warping. Reyes took a step forward, gripping his weapon, but the moment his foot touched the floor, he wasn't on the ship anymore. He was somewhere else. A vast, endless void stretched before him. No stars, no planets, only shadows shifting, whispering, reaching. The ground beneath him felt soft, damp, like flesh. Then he saw them. Towering monoliths, each covered in symbols older than time itself. At their bases, figures knelt in silence, humanoid but wrong. Their bodies stretched unnaturally, their limbs elongated as if reality itself had twisted around them. Their faces were empty, smooth as if they had forgotten what they once were. They were like you once. The voice rang through Reyes' skull. It was not sound. It was understanding forced into his mind. They came searching. They were found. Something moved behind him. A shape shifting, undulating, forming itself from the void. It had no face, no form, only a presence that pressed against his thoughts, its hunger infinite. Now you will understand. Reyes tried to run, but the ground reached up, pulling him down. The monoliths opened their eyes. Reyes struggled, but the ground was no longer just beneath him. It was holding him, pulling him deeper. The monoliths watched. Their eyes were not like the thing in the void. They were older, filled with something worse than malice. They held knowledge, and knowledge was pain. You were never meant to see. Reyes screamed as his mind fractured, forced open like a book with too many pages. He saw civilizations rise and fall, entire species erased from existence as if they had never been. He saw creatures that should not exist, whispering to the stars, calling something back. And then he saw Earth, floating in the dark. Small, fragile. The whispering stopped. Something was looking at it. Not a god, not a monster, something worse. You called to us. Now we answer. Reyes tried to close his eyes, but there was no escape. He could feel the presence moving toward Earth, its hunger stretching across the void. It had been waiting for someone to open the door. And Erebus 9 had done just that. The monoliths began to hum, their symbols burning silver, as if awakening from an eternal slumber. Reyes felt himself dissolve, his body fading into the knowledge, becoming one with the endless dark. The last thing he heard before his consciousness shattered was a whisper, soft and eternal, "We are coming." Reyes no longer existed as a man. He was thought without form, consciousness stretched across a vast and endless abyss. He could see everything, past, present, and futures that had never been. He saw Eternus, not as a planet, but as a prison. The ones who came before had locked something away there, something that should have never been found. And now, because of Erebus 9, it was free. A voice coiled around his mind, ancient and patient. You were warned. Reyes wanted to fight, to resist, but he was losing himself. His memories drifted apart, pulled into the infinite, swallowed by knowledge too vast for a human mind. He saw Earth again, closer this time. The thing in the void was moving toward it. They will not understand. They will not see until it is too late. The monoliths began to shift, pulling apart. From within them, something rose. Not flesh, not shadow, something in between. It had no true shape, only an overwhelming sense of presence, and it was waiting. Waiting for the moment when Earth would see the truth. Somewhere on Erebus 9, Holt was still screaming. The ship was adrift now, its systems failing, its crew lost between worlds. A single distress signal broadcast into the void, a message that no one would ever understand. A warning. But it was too late. The old reality had awakened, and Earth was next. The distress signal pulsed through the void, a whisper against the vast indifference of space. No response, no rescue, only silence. Inside Erebus 9, Holt's screams had faded into ragged breathing. She was alone now, at least as alone as one could be in a place where the walls moved. She pressed herself against the cold metal of the control panel, staring at the viewport. The thing in the dark was closer now. It did not move like a ship. It did not drift like a celestial body. It was alive, and it was watching. They were not the first. The whisper came from nowhere and everywhere, sliding beneath her skin. But they are the last. The ship groaned, metal warping, changing. The corridors no longer led where they should. The doors opened to places that did not exist. A figure stood in the doorway. Holt's breath caught in her throat. It was Reyes, but it wasn't. His face was blurred, shifting like a mirage, eyes dark and endless. When he spoke, his voice was layered, filled with whispers not his own. We were wrong. Holt shook her head, backing away. No, you died. Time does not work here. The lights flickered. The shadow beyond the viewport moved. Holt understood then. They had never been explorers. They had been bait. And now the thing in the dark was ready. The old reality would not be ignored. It was coming. And nothing would stop it. The ship shuddered, metal groaning like a dying beast. The lights flickered one last time, and then went out. Total darkness. Holt held her breath, heart hammering. She could still feel Reyes' presence, but he was no longer moving. no longer speaking, just watching. Outside, the thing in the void pulsed, alive, awake and waiting. A single alarm blinked on the control panel, a countdown. Something had activated. They want to go back. The whisper did not belong to Reyes. It came from the ship itself. Holt's fingers trembled as she reached for the screen. The countdown was not a distress beacon, not an escape protocol. It was a transmission. A message, encoded in a language older than humanity, preparing to send itself outward. Holt's eyes widened in horror. They weren't the first crew to come here, but now, because of Erebus 9, it would not stay hidden anymore. Earth would hear. Earth would listen, and Earth would answer. A deep, resonant tone vibrated through the ship as the transmission launched into the void. It was done. Holt turned to Reyes. His face was still shifting, but now she could see something else beneath the distortion. A smile, not human. The viewport cracked, and then silence. End of part 1.